The hallowed halls of Hogwarts, ancient and imbued with centuries of magic, usually held a comforting predictability. Autumn had settled over the castle, painting the forbidden forest in fiery hues and chilling the air that swept through the courtyards. Students bustled through the corridors, their laughter and the murmur of spells echoing against the stone, a familiar symphony that had played out for generations. Yet, amidst this comforting rhythm, a discordant note had begun to hum, subtle at first, then growing steadily louder, a whisper of magic untamed and unknown. Alara Thorne, a sixth-year Ravenclaw, was the first to truly notice. Her mind, a labyrinth of arcane theories and historical magical anomalies, was perfectly attuned to such subtleties. She possessed an insatiable curiosity that often led her deep into the restricted section, past the witching hour, fueled by strong, scalding tea and an almost spiritual devotion to forgotten lore. Tonight, however, her solitary vigil in the astronomy tower was interrupted not by a dusty tome, but by something far more immediate and ethereal. She had been sketching constellations, meticulously charting the movements of celestial bodies, when a shimmer, faint as a moth's wing, caught her eye. It wasn't the usual ethereal glow of a Luna moth, nor the sparkle of a rogue spell. This was different, a pure, almost primal light, devoid of color, that seemed to coalesce from the very air itself. It pulsed, a silent heartbeat against the vast, star-strewn canvas of the night sky, originating from the very core of the tower, seeping through the ancient stones. Alara, ever the pragmatist, immediately tried to identify it. Lumos? No. A Patronus? Certainly not. A misfired charm? Unlikely. She edged closer, her hand instinctively reaching for her wand, not out of fear, but out of an overwhelming urge to understand. The light rippled, expanding slightly, then contracting like a living breath. It was cool, yet it sent a strange warmth through her fingertips as she extended them towards it. As her fingers brushed the shimmering veil, a jolt, not of electricity, but of pure, untainted magic, coursed through her. Images flashed through her mind, fleeting glimpses of ancient runes, of swirling stardust, of the castle itself, breathing. The light pulsed more intensely, swirling into a miniature vortex. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished, leaving behind nothing but the scent of ozone and the persistent tingle in Alara's outstretched hand. The next morning, Alara's notes were filled with frantic scribbles and frustrated diagrams. She cross-referenced every known magical phenomenon, every obscure spell, every mention of spontaneous magical discharge, but found nothing that matched the Lumina, as she had christened it. She tried to dismiss it as a hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation and too much tea, but the tingle in her hand remained, a constant, low-frequency hum. Over the next few days, the Lumina's appearances became more frequent, though still fleeting and subtle. A flickering, colorless glow in an empty corridor, vanishing before it could be properly observed. A strange, resonant hum emanating from the dungeons, too deep to be machinery, too ethereal to be a creature. Whispers, like the rustling of ancient parchment, heard by students walking alone, often dismissed as the castle's eccentricities. Yet, Alara noticed. She saw the flashes, heard the murmurs, felt the subtle shifts in the ambient magic that no one else seemed to perceive. The very air of Hogwarts felt charged, pregnant with unspoken energy. Leo Vance, a Gryffindor with a mop of unruly brown hair and a perpetually mischievous grin, was less attuned to ancient lore but possessed an uncanny knack for stumbling into trouble. His encounter with the Lumina was far more direct and significantly more startling. He was in the middle of a rather intense and strictly forbidden late-night duel with a fellow Gryffindor in an abandoned classroom on the 4th floor. Spells flew, sparks showered, and laughter echoed. Just as Leo was about to disarm his opponent with a particularly flamboyant Expelliarmus, his wand, usually a reliable extension of his will, began to glow with an intense, pure light, the Lumina. It pulsed, brighter than any Lumos spell, and then, inexplicably, the classroom itself seemed to ripple. Textbooks on shelves floated gently, quills danced in midair, and the entire room vibrated with a low hum. Leo and his friends stared, dumbfounded, as the phenomenon escalated, their duel forgotten. Then, with a soft pop, the lumina retracted into Leo's wand, leaving it cool and inert. He could barely muster a spark. His dueling partner, equally shaken, muttered something about too much junk food and fled. Leo, however, knew it wasn't indigestion. His wand had just played host to something extraordinary, something that had momentarily twisted the fabric of reality around him. Seraphina Sarah Dubois, a Slytherin with eyes that missed nothing and a mind sharper than a freshly honed blade, encountered the lumina in a more methodical, less dramatic fashion. She was in the potions classroom, meticulously brewing a particularly delicate truth serum, a task that required absolute precision. As she added powdered moonstone to the simmering cauldron, a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer caught her eye in the reflection of the potion's surface. It wasn't the usual shimmer of a perfectly brewed potion, but a detached, ethereal luminescence that seemed to emanate from within the liquid itself, making the moonstone glow brighter than it should have. Then, the potion began to bubble erratically, its color shifting through hues of sapphire and emerald before settling back into its intended pearlescent sheen. Sarah, unlike Leo, didn't panic. She meticulously sampled the potion, noting its slight, almost imperceptible, deviation from standard efficacy. Later, she observed other potion ingredients in the storeroom behaving oddly. Vials vibrating faintly, rare herbs emitting a faint, cool light. It wasn't a contamination, nor was it spoilage. It was an infusion, a subtle alteration of their fundamental magical properties. The ambient magic was behaving strangely, affecting everything, and Sarah's analytical mind immediately flagged it as an anomaly demanding investigation. It was inevitable that these three would cross paths. Alara, desperate for someone who might understand, initially sought out her fellow Ravenclaws, but their explanations were mundane atmospheric static, residual magical discharge from ancient battles, or simply Hogwarts being Hogwarts. Frustrated, she remembered Leo's tale of the glowing wand, a story he'd initially spun as a joke to avoid detention for illegal dueling. She cornered him in the great hall, her eyes intense. "Vance?" she began, her voice low and urgent. "Your wand that night. What precisely happened?" Leo, surprised by her seriousness, recounted the incident, adding a few dramatic embellishments about bolts of pure energy. Alara listened intently, her brow furrowed. "And the classroom? Did anything shift?" "Well, yeah," Leo admitted, slightly unnerved by her intensity. "The books floated, and I swear the desk moved a foot to the left, then back." Alara's eyes lit up. "Exactly. The localized distortion of space. The resonant hum. It's the lumina." Leo blinked. "The what now?" Alara launched into a rapid-fire explanation of her observations, her research, and her burgeoning theory of a new, or rather, reawakened, form of pure magic. Leo, despite his initial skepticism, couldn't deny the vivid reality of his own experience. He suggested they consult Sarah Dubois, whom he'd heard mutter about unaccountable alchemical fluctuations. Finding Sarah proved challenging. She was notoriously private. But Alara's relentless logic and Leo's surprising persuasiveness finally got them a clandestine meeting in a rarely used alcove in the library, shrouded by forgotten tapestries. "I've noticed it too," Sarah admitted, her voice crisp and low, after Alara finished her detailed account. "Not a rogue spell, not a creature. This is fundamental. The very fabric of magic itself, shifting. My potion samples show traces of unstable ethereal particles, too subtle for any known diagnostic charm. They resonate at a frequency I've never before encountered." "Precisely," Alara exclaimed, pushing her spectacles up her nose. "I've scoured every text on ambient magic, ley lines, ancient wards, and even the obscure writings of alchemists like Paracelsus and Flammel. There are scattered, almost mythical references to what they called anima lux, or etheric weave, a form of pure magical essence, not cast by a wand, but inherent in powerful magical locations. It's said to be the breath of magic, incredibly rare and thought to be dormant for millennia. Dormant, perhaps, Sarah mused, but certainly not now. The question is, why is it awakening? And what are its properties? And is it dangerous? Leo added, ever practical. So far, unpredictable, but not malicious, Elara replied. More like a child exploring its own power. But it's growing stronger. We need to find its source, its origin point within the castle. They formed an unlikely alliance. Elara, with her vast knowledge and meticulous research skills, became their guide. Leo, with his Gryffindor courage and surprising agility, was their scout and muscle. Sarah, with her sharp mind, analytical prowess, and extensive knowledge of practical magic and charms, was their strategist and problem solver. They decided to meet secretly, late at night, mapping out the castle, correlating every reported strange event with Elara's observations and Sarah's magical readings. Their investigations led them deep into the older, forgotten parts of Hogwarts. They hypothesized that the luminous source would be located near a powerful convergence of ley lines, perhaps even a previously unknown nexus of magical energy. They spent nights exploring dusty attics, echoing abandoned classrooms, and cold, damp basements, often narrowly avoiding detection by Filch or errant professors. One particularly damp evening, their hunt led them beneath the dungeons, far below the potions classroom, to an area only vaguely hinted at on the oldest, most obscure Hogwarts maps, a sub-basement marked simply as uncharted. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient magic. Sarah's detection charms fizzled erratically, and Elara's compass spun wildly. "We're close," Elara whispered, her voice tinged with excitement. "The ambient magical signatures are off the charts here." They finally arrived at a wall, unremarkable at first glance, but emanating a faint, cool hum. It was smooth, unmarred by mortar lines, as if carved from a single, impossibly ancient stone. There was no visible door, no handle, no crack. "A hidden entrance," Sarah murmured, running her fingers over the seamless surface. "Ward magic, deep and complex, probably self-repairing." Elara pulled out a leather-bound journal, one she'd found deep within the restricted section, containing obscure references to architectural magic, woven into the very foundations of Hogwarts. She found a faint diagram, a sequence of runic symbols, barely visible. "It's a sequence," she explained, tracing the symbols with her finger. "A key not for a lock, but for a magical pressure plate. It requires precise magical resonance." Leo, ever impatient, tried a simple Alohomora. Nothing. He then tried a more forceful blasting charm. The wall vibrated faintly, but remained unbroken. "This is going to take all night," he grumbled. "Not if we're smart," Sarah countered, already pulling out a small file from her bag. "Elara, the resonance pattern. Leo, your raw magical output. I'll prepare a focus agent." Under Sarah's precise instructions, Elara began to trace the ancient runic sequence on the smooth stone, not with her wand, but with pure intent, focusing on the specific magical frequencies she'd gleaned from the text. As she completed each symbol, a faint, almost imperceptible line of silver light appeared. Leo, channeling his raw Gryffindor power, placed his hand on the final symbol, pouring his magic into it as Elara completed the mental frequency. Sarah, with a swift motion, flicked a few drops of a shimmering, quicksilver liquid onto the glowing symbols. The wall shivered. The cool hum intensified, morphing into a low thrum that resonated in their bones. A faint outline of a circular doorway began to glow on the seamless stone. It expanded, revealing not a void, but a swirling vortex of the pure, colorless light, the lumina. "After you," Leo said, his voice laced with a mixture of awe and trepidation. They stepped through the shimmering threshold. The air inside was still, ancient, and charged with an almost overwhelming magical presence. They found themselves in a vast, circular chamber, its walls carved from the same seamless stone, forming a perfect dome overhead. There were no torches, no windows, yet the chamber was bathed in a soft, ethereal glow emanating from every surface. And at its very center, resting upon a simple, unadorned stone pedestal, was nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yet the lumina was overwhelmingly present here. It wasn't just a faint shimmer. It pulsed and flowed through the air like a living river of light. It swirled around them, coalescing into ephemeral shapes of fleeting phoenix, a roaring lion, a soaring eagle, a cunning serpent before dissolving back into formless light. The air thrummed with its energy, and they could feel it reacting to their presence, to their very thoughts, their magic. Felt sentient, not intelligent in a human sense, but aware, curious, perhaps even lonely. "It's beautiful," Elara breathed, mesmerized. Her academic curiosity momentarily overshadowed her caution. She reached out, drawn by an irresistible pull. As her hand entered the swirling lumina, it reacted violently. The light flared, brighter than before, and coalesced around her hand, then around her entire arm. It wasn't painful, but it was an overwhelming sensation, like being immersed in pure thought. Images, clearer than before, flooded her mind. She saw a wizened old wizard, his robes simple, his hands calloused, intricately carving runes into the very stone of Hogwarts. She saw him performing a complex ritual, not one of summoning or banishing, but of anchoring, of binding something vast and powerful to the castle's foundations. And then, a symbol clear as day, a stylized knot of light and shadow, impossibly intricate, seeming to shift and writhe as she looked at it. It was a sigil she had never seen, not in any book, not on any ancient relic. It pulsed with a profound sense of purpose. Suddenly, the lumina around her flared again, and the vision intensified, becoming a full sensory immersion. She felt the wizard's immense focus, his weariness, his love for the nascent castle. She felt the raw, wild power he was trying to tame, to harness. Then, abruptly, the vision fractured. The lumina around Elara recoiled, drawing back to the pedestal. The chamber itself began to shake. A deep groan echoed from the stone. Cracks, hairline at first, then widening, spiderwebbed across the ceiling. Dust rained down, thick and suffocating. The lumina, no longer a gentle, curious entity, swirled violently, lashing out like a cornered beast. Objects, small stones, flecks of dust began to levitate erratically, swirling into miniature cyclones. The air grew heavy, oppressive, and the magical energies crackled around them, no longer benign but dangerously unstable. "It's collapsing," Leo yelled, grabbing Elara's arm. "Or trying to seal itself again. It's reacting to us," Sarah cried, her eyes wide as a section of the ceiling began to splinter. "It feels threatened, or maybe it's trying to expel us." They stumbled back, forced to retreat as the very fabric of the chamber seemed to tear itself apart. The doorway, through which they had entered, began to shrink, the lumina vortex receding. Leo, with a burst of Gryffindor adrenaline, shoved Elara and Sarah through just as the light imploded, sealing the chamber once more with a thunderous crack that vibrated through the very bedrock of Hogwarts. They landed unceremoniously in the damp corridor outside, gasping for breath, covered in dust and sweat, their minds reeling. For a long moment, the only sound was their ragged breathing and the distant, muffled hum of the castle. What was that?" Leo finally managed, rubbing his bruised arm. Elara, though shaken, was already pulling out a quill and parchment, her eyes alight with a frantic energy. "The symbol. I saw it clearly. And a wizard, he was binding something, anchoring it. The lumina. It's not just a phenomenon. It's a presence. It was reacting to my presence, perhaps to my desire to understand it." She sketched furiously, replicating the intricate knot of light and shadow she had seen in her vision. "It nearly crushed us," Sarah stated, ever practical. "It's powerful and volatile. It's reacting to what? Our intrusion? Its own awakening. It showed me a ritual," Elara continued, ignoring Sarah's warning. "A ritual of stabilization. I think this Lumina is the raw, untamed magic that forms the very essence of Hogwarts. And it's been dormant, perhaps for centuries, anchored by that wizard. But now something has disrupted that anchor, and it's awakening without guidance, without control. Leo looked from the intricate symbol to the ancient, impenetrable wall. So we broke into a chamber of pure, living magic, nearly got squashed, and now we know what? That Hogwarts is alive and possibly having a magical meltdown. Precisely, Alara said, a glint in her eye that was both terrifying and exhilarating. And we have a symbol, a key, perhaps, to understanding not just the Lumina, but the very soul of Hogwarts. This isn't just a mystery, it's a race against time. If the Lumina continues to grow unstable, it could tear the castle apart. Sarah stared at the wall, then at the symbol, her initial frustration giving way to a flicker of profound curiosity. The architect's anima, she murmured, a rare smile playing on her lips. This is far more complex than I anticipated. The three students, an unlikely trio forged by a shared secret and a burgeoning threat, looked at each other. They had stumbled upon a mystery far grander than any school project, a secret buried within the very heart of Hogwarts itself. The whisper of the Lumina had turned into a roar, and they were now inextricably caught in its storm. The first step was understanding that intricate, elusive symbol. The next, they knew, would be far more dangerous. The narrow, twisting corridors of Hogwarts had never seemed so alive or so unpredictable. Following their harrowing escape from the Lumina's heart chamber, the trio Alara, Leo, and Sarah had found themselves at the precipice of a discovery so profound it overshadowed any academic pursuit. The Lumina, the raw, untamed essence of Hogwarts, was stirring, its awakening manifesting in increasingly erratic and public ways. The castle was no longer a predictable home. It was a living, breathing entity whose very pulse had become dangerously irregular. Their secret meeting spot, a forgotten alcove behind a tapestry depicting a rather unenthusiastic-looking centaur, became their war room. Alara, fueled by endless cups of strong coffee, spent every waking moment deciphering the intricate symbol she had seen. It was a knot of light and shadow, constantly shifting, hinting at layers of meaning. She devoured every book in the restricted section on ancient sigils, arithmancy, and forgotten runic languages, often murmuring to herself about symbiotic energy flow and transdimensional resonance. Her hair, usually neat, was a wild, ink-stained tangle, and dark circles bloomed under her eyes. Leo, meanwhile, used his considerable charm and natural Gryffindor audacity to subtly probe professors, distract Filch, and even accidentally wander into forbidden archives under the guise of looking for misplaced quills. His role was primarily reconnaissance, but also to provide a much-needed grounding force against Alara's single-minded intensity and Sarah's cynical practicality. He'd occasionally bring back snippets of conversation from the staff room, Professor Flitwick complaining about charms behaving erratically, Professor Sprout lamenting plants growing too fast, too slow, or glowing faintly at night. Even Professor McGonagall had been overheard muttering about the castle's wards feeling unsettled. Sarah, ever the pragmatist, focused on the immediate, tangible effects of the Lumina. She experimented with the trace particles they'd brought back from the chamber, analyzing their unique magical signature. She noted the increasing frequency of students experiencing strange, harmless but unnerving phenomena. A teacup pouring endless tea, a staircase leading to a wall, a portrait winking with uncharacteristic malice. The professors, increasingly concerned, were now attributing these occurrences to a surge in ambient magic due to an unusual convergence of planetary alignments, or to residual energy from a particularly strong storm. Only a handful, like Dumbledore, seemed to possess a deeper, more knowing stillness about the escalating oddities. Alara finally found a breakthrough. Deep within a brittle, parchment-bound volume titled The Esoteric Principles of Castlecraft, she found a fleeting mention of the architect's anima. It spoke of a master arcanist named Ignatius Verus, a contemporary of the Hogwarts founders, known for weaving abstract magical principles into structural design. Verus, the text claimed, sought not merely to build a castle, but to create a living, breathing monument to magic itself, anchoring it to the very ley lines of the land. His magnum opus, the book hinted, was a complex system of anima weaving, designed to draw in the pure, raw magical essence of the earth and imbue it into the castle's very stones, making Hogwarts eternally resilient, eternally powerful. The symbol she had seen, the knot of light and shadow, was Varys's personal sigil, representing the harmonious, or perhaps precarious, balance between light, magic, and shadow structure. The vision in the chamber clicked into place. The old wizard Alara had seen was Ignatius Varys. He hadn't been creating the lumina. He had been binding it, stabilizing the anima weave, to prevent it from overwhelming the castle. The lumina wasn't a new magic. It was Hogwarts' very soul, its lifeblood, now destabilized. He called it the heart of Hogwarts, Alara whispered, tracing the symbol on her map. A physical manifestation of the anima weave's core. A keystone. A keystone, Leo repeated, looking skeptical. So, someone took the castle's heart? It would explain why the lumina is so unstable now, Sarah interjected, her eyes narrowed in thought. Without its anchor, the energy would diffuse, becoming chaotic, affecting everything indiscriminately. Sarah's analyses confirmed it. The ethereal particles she'd isolated from the chamber weren't just residual magic. They contained traces of very specific, obscure minerals, resonant crystals found only in deep earth veins, compounds mentioned in Varys's scattered alchemical notes as resonance conductors. Her hunch was that the heart of Hogwarts was a carefully crafted artifact, designed to resonate with these compounds and stabilize the lumina. Meanwhile, the lumina's public manifestations escalated beyond mere oddities. Whispers turned into distinct, though distorted, voices echoing through empty corridors, not evil, but disorienting. Students reported brief, localized zones of magical nullification, where wands refused to work, followed by sudden bursts of uncontrolled magic. A set of stairs in the grand staircase famously rearranged themselves into a slide, much to the initial delight, then terror, of students attempting to descend. Portraits flickered between their subjects and fleeting images of forgotten landscapes within the castle. The teachers were now undeniably worried, though Dumbledore maintained a stoic calm, his eyes twinkling with a knowing light whenever he saw the trio whispering intently in a corner. He seemed to be letting them find their own way, trusting their innate curiosity and ability. "We need to find out what happened to the heart," Alara stated, poring over ancient school records in a dusty, long-forgotten archive room that Leo had managed to accidentally stumble upon. Varys wouldn't have just left it unprotected. It would have been hidden, secured. Their research led them to a startling revelation. The heart of Hogwarts had indeed been in the chamber they discovered, but it hadn't been removed by a thief. An obscure, almost entirely erased entry in a forgotten headmaster's log from the 17th century hinted at a major magical catastrophe. A rending of the castle's core, caused by a dark ritual performed by a rogue faction of pureblood supremacists who sought to purify Hogwarts magic. The ritual had backfired, causing a localized implosion that destroyed the heart and nearly brought down a section of the castle, before being contained by the headmaster of the time. The chamber had then been sealed, its existence buried under layers of protective magic and deliberate forgetfulness. The lumina had been forced into dormancy, but never truly vanquished. It had merely retreated, bleeding its pure energy back into the ley lines, waiting for its core to be restored. "So, the lumina isn't just waking up," Sarah concluded, her voice grim. "It's trying to heal itself. It's searching for its missing anchor, its heart. And if it can't find it or we can't provide one, it could consume itself, taking Hogwarts with it." The stakes had never been higher. The lumina was now manifesting as visible, shimmering waves of energy, causing minor tremors throughout the castle. Books levitated from shelves during classes, suits of armor clanked of their own accord, and the famous ceiling of the Great Hall sometimes shifted through impossible constellations. Students were growing agitated, whispering about curses and hauntings. "We need to recreate it," Alara declared, slamming a heavy tome shut. Varus's notes detail the materials required for a secondary anchor, a resonance refocalizer, rare earth crystals, pure elemental infusions, and a significant outpouring of focused magical intent. The components were a challenge. Solaris quartz, a rare crystal said to capture pure sunlight, found only in the highest peaks of the Scottish Highlands. Leo, surprisingly, used his skills in navigating forbidden areas and his ability to distract magical creatures, and occasionally, Hagrid, to obtain a large, pulsating shard. Etheric dew, condensate from the purest magical ley lines, notoriously difficult to collect without disrupting the flow. Sarah, with her advanced knowledge of enchanting and alchemy, devised a series of delicate, finely tuned containment charms that slowly siphoned it from a nexus point deep within the forbidden forest. The Whispering Bloom, a mythical flower that grew only in places of profound magical sorrow or profound magical joy, said to absorb ambient emotion. Alara, after extensive research, found a legend of one growing near the site of Dumbledore's sister's death in Godric's Hollow, a place where both immense grief and enduring love had permeated the earth. She subtly extracted a petal using a complex absorption charm. The process of forging the new heart of Hogwarts was a testament to their combined skills. They set up their alchemical lab in the same hidden alcove, under the watchful, unseeing gaze of the tapestry centaur. Sarah, with meticulous precision, ground the Solaris quartz into a fine powder, mixing it with the condensed etheric dew and the crushed petals of the Whispering Bloom. Alara provided the ancient incantations, spells of binding and resonance that she'd found in Varus's journals, guiding the energies. Leo, with raw, focused bursts of magic, provided the necessary power to fuse the volatile components. The makeshift laboratory shimmered with magical energy, glowing with a soft, pure light. Hours turned into days, punctuated by intense bursts of magical activity and moments of disheartening failure. Finally, on the eve of the Lumina's most violent manifestation, yet the entire castle seemed to breathe with a visible, undulating glow, causing every magical object to hum loudly. The new heart of Hogwarts was complete. It was a smooth, fist-sized crystal, pulsating with a soft, ethereal glow, mirroring the very energy of the Lumina, but stable, contained, and radiating a profound sense of peace. "It's ready," Sarah declared, holding it aloft, her face smudged with alchemical soot but her eyes shining with triumph. "Now for the hard part," Alara added, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Getting back into the chamber and performing the binding ritual." The journey to the sub-basement chamber was perilous. The Lumina, now raging unchecked throughout the castle, seemed to actively resist them. Corridors elongated, walls shifted, and the very air warped around them. Ghostly whispers became clear, disembodied voices murmuring in forgotten tongues, attempting to disorient them. At one point, the ceiling of a hallway seemed to melt, revealing a vision of a starry night sky, then solidified again, leaving them momentarily blind. They relied on their collective strengths. Alara's intricate knowledge of the castle's hidden passages, Leo's brute force to push through suddenly solid walls, and Sarah's rapid-fire countercharms to deflect bursts of errant magic. They finally reached the hidden wall, now pulsing with a furious, uncontrolled light. The familiar runic sequence was obscured by swirling Lumina energy. "It's too volatile," Leo yelled over the roar of the contained magic. "We have to focus it," Sarah instructed, pulling out a handful of small, enchanted spheres. "Alara, the resonance pattern again. Leo, be ready to channel the pure power of the heart." Under Sarah's guidance, they formed a protective circle. Sarah tossed the spheres, which exploded into fields of contained, focused magic, creating a temporary conduit. Alara, with utmost concentration, began tracing the complex runic sequence through the swirling Lumina, her fingers cutting lines of pure, silver light into the turbulent energy. As she completed each symbol, the Lumina within the wall thrummed, responding to the ancient call. With a final, explosive surge of energy, the wall once again dissolved into a vortex of light. This time, however, the Lumina was not welcoming. It roared, a soundless scream of pure, unbound power. Inside the chamber, the chaos was absolute. The lumina swirled like a furious hurricane of light, lashing out with tendrils of raw magic that struck the walls, causing chunks of stone to shatter and levitate wildly. The air crackled with untold power, making it difficult to breathe, to think. The very ground vibrated beneath their feet. The pedestal! Alara yelled over the magical storm, pointing to the empty stone platform in the center. We have to place the heart there. They moved as one. Sarah created a shimmering magical shield to deflect a particularly violent lash of the lumina. Leo, shouting, charged forward, his Gryffindor courage overriding any sense of self-preservation. Alara, chanting the ancient words of the binding ritual, followed, her eyes fixed on the pedestal. As Leo reached the center, he braced himself against the wind of pure magic. With a mighty yell, he plunged the newly forged heart of Hogwarts onto the pedestal. The moment the crystal touched the stone, the lumina reacted with a terrifying, blinding intensity. The chamber exploded in a silent, pure white light. The roaring vortex compressed, collapsing inwards with unimaginable force, drawing all the raw, wild magic back to its source. Alara, still chanting, felt the ancient words resonate with the imploding energy, guiding it, soothing it. Sarah reinforced the shield around them, the pressure threatening to crush them. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the storm ceased. The blinding light receded, replaced by a gentle, steady glow emanating from the crystal on the pedestal. The lumina, no longer a raging beast, now swirled peacefully around the heart, a constant, luminous guardian. The cracks in the chamber walls sealed themselves, the levitating stones settled, and the air filled with a sense of profound calm and ancient power. Exhausted, trembling, but profoundly triumphant, the trio stood in the chamber, watching the steady, quiet pulse of the newly anchored lumina. The heart of Hogwarts beat once more. They emerged into the quiet corridor, covered in dust but radiating an unspoken power. The castle above them was settling. The tremors ceased. The erratic magic faded, replaced by a deep, resonant hum of peace. As they ascended the steps, weary but exhilarated, they found Professor Dumbledore standing quietly by the entrance to the sub-basement, his eyes twinkling, a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. He offered no words of admonishment, no questions about their late-night adventures. He simply nodded, a profound respect in his gaze. It seems, he said, his voice soft, that Hogwarts breathes easier tonight, and its heart, I dare say, beats stronger than it has in centuries. He looked at each of them in turn, his eyes lingering on the new, subtle aura of powerful magic that now clung to them. You have done a great service, not just to this castle, but to magic itself. The lumina, the mysterious magic of Hogwarts, was no longer a threat. It was understood, re-anchored, and once more became the quiet, benevolent force that strengthened the castle's foundations, its wards, and its very essence. It was a subtle, beautiful presence, often unseen by most, but now deeply felt by Alara, Leo, and Sarah. They had not only saved Hogwarts, but had come to understand its true nature, a living, magical entity, whose deepest secrets they had helped to heal. Their bond, forged in the crucible of shared danger and profound discovery, was as strong and as luminous as the lumina itself. The mysterious magic had found its peace, and in doing so had left an indelible mark on their souls.